Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. And joining us tonight, we've got a special guest, fellow Virginian and writer and contributor for the Deseret News. We got Jackson Payne. Jackson, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, anything for some fellow Virginians, happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, we've also found out that we have a few connections that I know two of your uncles from different sides of your family. So great. It's small world. And even though I guess even smaller in the church, but it's getting bigger because now we're getting how many temples out here now? I'm losing track.
It's like 4. When I was in high school, they announced the Richmond one, and I was like stoked because obviously I grew up in the DC area, closer to the DC temple, but just like having a temple in your state sounded really cool to me. And so to have 4 now is like, holy cow, it's like winning 4 championships.
Sure. it does feel like that every time. I mean, we're cheering like it, right? Actually, I think this time, even though they asked you not to, I think the Norfolk temple got the loudest cheer. So those rowdy Virginians. But so this episode is kind of a long time coming because we never really did a wrap up. We did a smaller wrap up, but we were going to do awards and everything after the basketball season, more directly after the season. But we were looking at it, and it just didn't really make sense. Like if you're going to do defensive player of the year, it's pretty obvious, who you're going to go, or like glue guy, like any awards we could come up with. Everyone had their role. Most improved player, like you can kind of figure everyone's going to come up with these same awards. So there's no real point in it. But I do want to talk about some of the highlights from some of the games in this season. Then we'll get into and get Jackson's input on what's going on in the offseason with this team as people leave, who's leaving, who's coming back, and what else this team needs to really round out its roster. So before we move into this offseason, though, let's tie a little bow on this season and discuss some of the top games of the year. So I broke it down, and I've already forgot what I said, but I want to talk about what we thought was the best win, what was the most memorable win, but then what was our favorite win. And so, Jackson, I'll kick it over to you to start off. What do you think was BYU's best win of this season?
It's a good question because there were so many great options, right? Like that second half of the season was so much fun, but I think it's got to be at Iowa State at the beginning of March. BYU's ranked kind of, I think they were 22 or 23 at the time. Iowa State's a top 10 team. Anytime you can knock off a top 10 team on the road is a big deal. But the way they did it, though, like the double overtime, you saw the guts of this team, and it kind of spilled into the tournament in March. There were a lot of moments this year where to be proud of this BYU team, right? And I think we'll get into some of them later. But that Iowa State win was definitely this Kevin Young's got it figured out. This is an awesome team. It was, for a while, it felt like BYU was going to get into the tournament, and that was going to be awesome. But that was kind of the win where it was like you could aspire for higher. It was like, okay, you can go toe-to-toe with Iowa State in Ames. Like this is awesome. And I think too, like last year when they went to Ames, they kind of fell apart down the stretch. That was kind of a tough end. To get that revenge going back, do it in double overtime. Like I said, beat a top 10 team on the road, like just really impressive stuff. And I think it continued some of that momentum. Obviously they built up, I think, did they win 8 straight to finish the season? I think like it was so much better to not have lost that one and keep going into the postseason, winning more games and going on that unbeaten run. So that was, just incredible, impressive win. Just one of those, like whether you're a BYU alum or just a fan of college basketball, you were just so fired up just because it was awesome theater.
Yeah, it was a great one. How about you, Adam?
Well, I'm going to come back to that Iowa State game later, but I'd say best win for me was Arizona on the road for similar reasons. Just such a tough place to play. Even more history, I think, than Iowa State. To do it, to gut it out at the end, kind of have that controversial call. Was it a phantom foul on Saunders? Was it not? They kept a lot of poise through that game, and to win on the road like that, to me, was sort of planting the flag in the Big 12 as saying, look, we're here, we're going to do some damage. We've turned the corner. Because I think prior to that, they'd had a couple big wins at home. They had blown out Kansas. They were gaining momentum. But that was when I had penciled in a long time, like, well, Arizona figured it out. They're playing great basketball. That's a loss. And I think Arizona would have been a top 10 team had they not fumbled the ball in their preseason schedule to start the year because they were playing such good basketball. When we went and won that game at Arizona, they were playing like a top 10 team. So that to me, what I felt like what was the inflection point on the season to say, yeah, we're improved, we're a better team, but we're not just a decently improved Big 12 team. We're a top 4 team in the conference.
Yeah, I'm with you, Adam. I thought the Arizona game was the first one that came to mind because of where they were ranked and what it meant at the time, because we were coming off of that big win over Kansas. But then, Kansas also lost to Utah on that same road trip. And, it became a little bit, I mean, it was still Kansas and it was at home, but this was on the road with a team that was playing really well. And so, and for all the reasons you laid out as well, I won't rehash those, and at that moment, because BYU, was floundering for a little bit, it looked like, okay, they've really got to, this West Virginia game felt like a must win for them just to even think about making it to March Madness. And then you had one over, K-State, who was really hot at the time, but still, kind of a middling team, Kansas, as I mentioned. And then, so that Arizona game, I think really said, okay, this wasn't a fluke, like BYU has arrived. And at that point, I think expectations started getting sky high. Okay, so now let's kick it to which game we think would be the most memorable win. I mean, there's lots throughout BYU's history, but we all think about that Jimmer, Kawhi game, right? And we think about several of those Gonzaga games that come to mind. So which one will really stand out as the game from this season that we'll all talk about? And there were several. I mean, hopefully we talk about a lot of these for years to come. But which one do you think is gonna be the most memorable going forward?
I mean, I don't want to keep rehashing the Arizona win because it's probably that. Even like the Iowa State game I talked about earlier, which was probably their best win, as we discussed. Like, that game was great, but the iconic factor, I think, the advantage goes to Arizona. Just the way it finished and the way it was a Saturday night game and everybody in the country was watching and just everybody was talking about that game. Like, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of people like from high school or just that I know from back east that were hitting me up like, oh, BYU can hoop. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you got to watch. But I'm partial to the Kansas win just because that was such a historic blowout. Like, first off, the fact that a blue blood of Kansas's caliber came to the Marriott Center was like the coolest thing ever. I was talking with Jeremy Guthrie, the former MLB pitcher, pitched for the Orioles and the Royals, and I was talking with him before the game, and he was just like, he's like, have you done any research? Like, when was the last time a team like of this caliber came and played at the Marriott Center? I'm like, I can't remember. I mean, obviously they had Gonzaga over the years in WCC, but Gonzaga is like a new blood and Kansas has like the century of history, right? So it's just the fact that that was the game that everyone's had circled on their calendar since BYU joined the Big 12. I remember at the Big 12 announcement press conference in 2021, I was at the Universe and we were interviewing Mark Pope and he was telling us like, oh, it's going to be so awesome when Kansas comes to town. Like this is literally a game years in the making, and it could not have lived up more to the hype. I mean, BYU just beat the brakes off of Kansas. Obviously we kind of know how it ended with Kansas. They didn't get out of the first round. They lost to Utah. That kind of waters it down. But just for me, that was kind of the like, all right, BYU's here. This isn't kind of a fluky Mike Leach kind of offense that they were running with Pope in the first year in the Big 12. Like, let's jack up a million threes. Like, they're playing good balanced basketball. They were good enough to just beat any team. And even though Kansas wasn't like the greatest opponent, obviously in the end, just doing it against anybody would have been impressive. But to do it against Kansas in that game that had so much buildup going into it, for me, that's the most memorable. And I mean, it was just, that was kind of like jaw dropping to the floor. Like BYU just beat Kansas by like a million points at home. And this preseason number one team, Bill Self, like all the factors. So there's so many to choose from, but I love that Kansas win. So I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, that's a strong argument. And that was such a cool night. And there's so many to choose from. I had thought about Iowa State. For me personally, I think that was the most memorable. Just double overtime, staying up, screaming at the television for that one was really fun. I mean, out east, when you get a double overtime game, BYU game, you're barely moving the next day because it's so late. But it was so worth it. But I would actually say the Baylor game, because it was somewhat unexpected for us, I think, to play that strong. And there were so many different storylines. You had the Conor McGregor factor there, which I think Wright even said when he transferred to BYU, referenced that game of just how crazy the atmosphere was. The Rock, and Conor McGregor getting hyped up when the BYU hat on. You've got catchings with a perfect night. You got all the NBA scouts in the world there. And just it felt like an event. And it was another one of those moments in the season where it's like, hey, BYU is a big deal. The level of the level of talent they have, the NBA scouts are attracting the eyeballs on the game, seeing us on Sports Center afterwards because of the game, because of Conor McGregor, because of Cannon catchings, all of that. Just it felt like a really cool moment.
Can I add something real quick to that? Just first off, East Coast BYU fans, there's a special place in heaven for you guys. Obviously, I lived it. Stay up that late to be that loyal. I mean, you guys are built different. I tweet that every once in a while to show some love to the East Coasters, but like staying up for those games is crazy. I'm just so much respect.
It's a bear, and I don't do it as often for basketball. I can't not watch the football games. Sometimes I want it to be a blowout either way, so I feel comfortable going to bed at halftime. And for some reason, those late games are never one way or the other, unless it's Kansas State, and I'm like, I'm not turning this out. This is too good.
Well, the thing about basketball games is that they're shorter, though. So even if they start at 9 or 9:30, you can still be in bed.
Unless they're double overtime.
Yeah.
I'm like, just hit the basket, man. Just win the game. I got to go to bed.
Cannon catches can't miss. Why are you guys missing, right?
Right?
That's right. That's a really good point about Baylor. I'm going to go with Kansas, though, just because of how big, Kansas is as a blue blood and how big that beatdown was. I just think that'll be forever talked about, Kansas going into the Marriott Center and just getting shellacked completely. I think that is memorable. But just to keep us rolling on the Baylor one, I was going to say that was my favorite game from the season, though, because of all those reasons you set out to move us into the next round, just because of the energy, Conor McGregor, and just like watching that live like that. I don't know. Were you at all the games this year, Jackson?
I was at all the home games. Yeah. And then I went to the tournament too.
Which home game was like the best environment, the loudest? Because to me, it kind of felt, I would have said Baylor watching it, but
probably Baylor. Yeah. I mean, Kansas was tough because it was a Tuesday. Obviously I'm graduated now. So like, doesn't really matter what day of the week it is, but a lot of students don't go to weekday games. Saturday games are always crazier. Well, was Baylor Saturday? I can't remember. Was Baylor?
I thought it was midweek, but I don't remember for sure.
I think it was, which makes it even crazier.
It just felt like the Kansas game had it was like when Gonzaga comes and it's on a Saturday, it's always better than a weekday. But for whatever reason, the Kansas game, there was just like, I don't think people understood the juice to it the way that like people like a lot of students didn't understand the historical juice factor. Whereas with Baylor, BYU has recent history with Baylor. It's the other religious school. Everyone knows RG3 on TV now, and he's kind of the Baylor cheerleader. So the Baylor game, definitely, that's the one that kind of students have. I think that's going to be an awesome rivalry going forward to the Big 12, obviously with the Rob Wright stuff that I'm sure we'll get into. But the Baylor game by far. And then Utah obviously was a pretty cool environment, but that was different because it was like, all right, Utah, you're still playing games at this point. Like, congrats. Yeah, just that was more of just like a senior night, like celebration type atmosphere. But Baylor, sorry, I went a long way to say that, but Baylor by far blew Kansas out of the water atmosphere-wise. Kansas wasn't terrible, but Baylor was just on a different level.
I will say about the argument for Kansas too being most memorable is I was on vacation with my family. I was in the hotel room watching it, obviously headphones, just on my phone while everyone's sleeping. And then I went to record a live reaction afterwards. I had to go down to our car out in the parking lot just so, with barely getting a signal. I think it was hotspot off my phone just to do that because it was, I was so excited. I was like, I can't miss this one. So that was memorable for me. But yeah, so I think Baylor was the most fun. But you were just talking about that both Iowa State games were great, but that first one, that you got a big argument for that because that game was. I was probably the most nervous during that whole game and anxious watching the whole thing. I was at the point where I really did just want it to end. Like my body couldn't take it anymore.
Oh, seriously? Yeah, I had a buddy that invited my wife and I over to watch it. And I don't stay up late and watch all the games with my wife. And we were all into that game and just so much nerve, so much energy going into that. And it just kept going and going and going. But it's awesome. I mean, as long as you win, you can't ask for much more than that.
I think I had to start doing push-ups in between the overtimes just to burn it off.
I think this year was a great kind of like erase the sadness of the past year. Like, I think we can all agree the WCC era was kind of a bummer. Just like you go in with such high expectations. It's like, all right, this is a high school gym league, and Gonzaga's good, obviously, but we can go and run the league. And clearly that wasn't the case, and there was just no juice. Like, basketball just kind of like, my freshman year was Dave Rose's last year at BYU, and there was just no buzz for basketball. It was so sad. And I just think with all these moments, obviously we're going to go into favorite game here, but like with all these moments that we can just rattle off, like there's so many. Kind of like, I mean, a couple of years ago it was like, oh man, BYU got an awesome win over USF, and Caleb Lohner had a huge rebound at the end. Like the bar is so much different now, and it's so. I mean, going into Arizona and winning, beating Kansas at home, like it's just as a lifelong BYU fan who now covers the team, it's just like I cannot believe this is reality. Like this was such an awesome year to kind of like exercise those demons of mediocre basketball, or just Dellavedova killing BYU and just stuff like that in the WCC. Play in a big boy league and to have this success right off the bat. And I mean, as memorable as it's been this year, is just unbelievable. So just want to get that out there.
I mean, you'd say out of BYU's top 10 games all time, I would say at least half of those have to be from this season.
100%.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right. So yeah. So let's just finish that off then. We said, what's our favorite game from the season that you take away?
I feel kind of hacky picking a tournament game, but that Wisconsin win was so awesome. I mean, I'm kind of biased because I was there. I was courtside. It was just unbelievable. Just the upset for BYU to go back to the Sweet 16. I mean, I was a Mawat Mag stan all year, so for him to kind of put the clamps on Tanjay at the end of the game and get that stop was so awesome. And that was just that was like pure BYU basketball, just like down to the wire, making plays when it mattered, scoring like crazy. Saunders going crazy. That was probably Yegor's best game of the year, considering stakes, performance, and competition. So that game was unbelievable. It's just for me, like to not pick a tournament game. Honestly, either the West Virginia game or the US or the UCF game, solely because like as a reporter, I like narratives, I like stories and kind of like how things happen. And that UCF game was so huge to kind of get some road mojo. But then that West Virginia game, that was like fight or flight. That was fight or flight mode. They had to win that game. Backs were against the wall. I remember watching that and thinking like, I have never seen a game where BYU has hit more clutch shots than this. Like they just always had an answer for West Virginia. Trey Stewart, awesome story, just kind of rode Pine for 3 years. That was kind of his coming out party in the Kevin Young era where they just unleashed him and he plays incredible defense and hits a bunch of threes. It was just that game. After they won that game, you could feel something special was going on. And, they didn't lose after that. I mean, they went on a run. And so I love the Wisconsin game, but I might have to give the edge to the West Virginia game just because of what it meant for the season and just how I felt watching it. I coach church ball too. I know you talked about my Uncle Gary. Shout out Coach Payne, coaching you in church ball growing up. But I coach our young men's basketball team here. And right after the games when BYU started. And so I'm watching in the church lobby. I couldn't go home. I was just like glued to my screen. It was just unbelievable game. And, a lot of people on the team talk about the UCF game being that turning point of the season. And it probably was. I mean, that was kind of the Kevin Young famous, like no one punks BYU game, but I think the West Virginia game was just so much more valuable because it just unleashed something within BYU where it's like, we do not lose anymore. This team doesn't lose. And from that point on, they didn't. So,
yeah. You mentioned UCF and West Virginia. That's a sore spot for me because we were going to be on vacation in Orlando. We were thinking early February, and it's like, I'm going to be able to hit UCF and come back and make it for West Virginia. Instead, we push it back 2 weeks, and we went, so I had to miss both games. So that's a big regret of mine that I will never see this rendition of this BYU men's basketball team because, Yegor, some of these guys that just won't be with the program anymore, and it was my chance to see this team. And so anyway, how about you, Adam?
Well, I am going to go with the tournament game for the reasons you outlined. There was just so much history at that time. We waited forever to be able to win a tournament game, then go back to the Sweet 16. And I really felt like that was the measure this year. We were going to call this year a success no matter what. You won a tournament game. You finished fourth in the Big 12. You got to the semifinal of the Big 12 tournament. All those things, all those markers said this was a successful year. But you needed that capstone to say we're winners. We can play with whoever. It's not just about the Big 12. And I think that was really a stamp on that game, and to win it the way they did with a defensive stop. I mean, that play right there to me was the play of the year.
Yeah.
And you always get, some clutch three or something like that. The defensive plays rarely get, especially like that. He didn't have a block, he didn't have a steal, he just stuck it to him and made it almost impossible to make the shot. And so to win it in that fashion was just awesome, with everything on the line in the tournament, going to the Sweet 16. That to me was my favorite game.
I'm so mad that moment wasn't in One Shining Moment. Just like that's still we only got one shot of Richie Saunders running down the court, and I think it was from the Alabama game. So already
Was it?
And then we got a more serious shot too. So it was like double salt on the wound. But like this tournament was so boring outside of the Final Four. We had like one buzzer beater. I'm a Maryland fan, so I was like kind of psyched about that. But like still, like that was the most electric finish outside of the Final Four and the Derek Queen buzzer beater. Like, how was that not in the? How was that not in the? That's crazy erasure for Mawat Mag.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I mean, and at least some lobs. We had blocks. We got Keba Keita. I don't know how he didn't get in there. If they're just looking for flashy plays or something, I don't know.
It's like the flashiest, most aesthetically pleasing BYU team ever, and we got a Richie Saunders running down the court shot. Like there's so much. We give them so much material. What are we doing here?
There weren't even tater tots on the shot. What's the point? All right, yeah, and I already said that I think that Baylor game, just because it's fun, I just love, and you're right. I mean, the tournament, it got us to the Sweet 16. That was kind of the cherry on top of the whole season. But I just think I love being in the Big 12. I love these rivalries are forming. I love what that means, and just all the hype and the energy watching that. Like I felt the energy from the Rock there, watching that game just through the TV. So, okay, sweet. So. I guess we could have done top plays and stuff, but that was fun memory going back and looking back on these games as I thought about this. But now we're moving on. We're already looking to next season, and I'm going to pull up a little graphic because for me, I'm a visual guy. It helps me think about, okay, here's the roster. Here's where everyone's going. Here's what's up. I don't know how visible it is on there, but I put yellow around people who have where it's finalized. We got Brody Kozlowski, who just announced shortly before us, all hopping on together. So he's running it back. And also tonight is, I think, the last night of the transfer portal. So if they don't get in, then all of these guys here will be locked in. Is that accurate, Jackson? And how does that work with somebody who can, like Richie, look at the draft, who, not have an agent and then still be able to return? What does he have to do? Is tonight a deadline for him as well?
I mean, it's only a deadline if he wants to enter the portal. I think he has a few more days if he wants to go the agent route, but I think he can pull out as late as June. It's really wonky now with like the NIL aspect and the portal aspect. Like I feel like it changes every year, but so I think he should be announcing somewhat soon. I'm anticipating he's coming back to BYU. I think he's going to go and like work out with teams and kind of get his feedback, less of do I leave now and more of, okay, what should I do this year to get to the NBA next year, right? So that would be my take, but I think his deadline is still a bit farther off.
Okay. And so you don't think he's going to, at least explore it, work out with some people and at least get feedback and see what they tell him?
Yeah, that's kind of my expectation. I mean, he's going to make more this year at BYU than if he went to the NBA right now. And I don't obviously he's older, just haven't served a mission, but like his stock isn't going to change dramatically based on one extra year of age, given what it is right now. So, yeah. I mean, he's second round draft pick worthy. I mean, he could go, but there's no guarantees obviously. And I think he could make generational money right now this coming year and play with AJ and be part of one of probably the greatest team in BYU history, as we're kind of hyping it up to be. So I would be shocked if Richie didn't come back. That's what I'll put it at.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better. Because I look at it and I think, his stock might not ever be higher than it is right now. We got the Tater Tot King and everything coming off of this tournament run, even though he only got that one shot in the one shining moment. But, and you look at someone like Jackson Robinson, who who was injured. He came back. He probably could have gone, maybe been a second-round pick last year, and then he got injured. And now I'm guessing it's not even, a possibility. Now he could probably find other avenues, but it doesn't seem like that is, on the table for him now. And so that is a risk that Richie runs as well. So, yeah, I don't know. It's not an easy decision, but I like that you feel good about him coming back.
I feel good about him coming back. I mean, like I said, I'd be shocked. You can hang me in the streets, do whatever you want to do if he goes to the NBA, but he's.
Oh, we will.
Hey, he could save the Wizards. You guys could see him. He'd be just right up the road, But we're going to wait till 2026 for that.
We'll go catch a Cavs game, see Dallin Hall, and then head up to DC.
That's right.
Okay, deal. Okay, so good. So we feel hopeful that he'll come back. I mean, obviously Richie is a big piece of this team next year. Obviously everything, and we'll talk about the guys coming in a moment. Obviously Debonsa is the centerpiece of all that, but with Richie, that then gives you two plus, guys that are real stars and can carry this team, and really then raises the ceiling a lot more. Of these other guys, and I don't know, maybe these other guys have said something and I missed it. I don't know if anyone, Dawson Baker, anyone has officially announced that they are coming back. But like we said, the portal closes. But as far as the transfer portal goes, is there a chance that that maybe Elijah Crawford comes back now that Hall is gone?
I don't think so. I think he's gone. And it's tough because he was a good prospect coming out, but he wants to play right away. And I don't think his playing time aspirations are going to match up with what BYU can offer, especially with Rob Wright coming. And then Dawson Baker coming back, and he can kind of handle some. I think they'll play Baker in kind of the Trevin Nell role this year, where he's kind of their corner guy, but he can give you a little more off the dribble. But I think Baker maybe on some rotations will be bringing the ball up, and that's time that Crawford can. So I don't think Crawford's coming back. Don't think Triple's coming back, which rest in peace to his mustache, because I'm going to miss that. But I think everybody else on that left-hand staying side, I'm like 99% sure is coming back. I mean, Jared McGregor, if he hasn't left by this point, I don't know why he would. Triplet, same deal. I mean, and then obviously the portal's interesting, but yeah, Richie and Kaba, I mean, their starting five next year could be so good. And I think this past season, their depth was kind of like the hallmark of their team, going 10, 11 deep and kind of having a bullpen of guys you could throw in for different situations. And I think they'll still have that kind of depth, maybe not 10 and 11 deep, but like they'll still have a decent bench. But that's starting five next year with Wright, if Saunders comes back, and AJ and Kaba, I mean, that's an incredible starting five. And then if they get into their transfer guard, which we'll talk about later, I mean, that's an unbelievable starting five.
Yeah, it is. So let's how do I do this here? So that's what I want to talk about. So before we get into the starting five, so this is what I have right now of who's staying. We got our commits and transfers, and from what I understand, mission as well. So, and I don't know, I couldn't remember, and I couldn't find anything on any other guys that might still be on missions that haven't returned yet. So I think this is kind of who we have right now. Is this accurate? Sorry, this is the first time you're looking at it. Put you on the spot.
Seems good to me.
So obviously, I think, as we said, the portal closes tonight, but that's just to enter the portal. There's still a chance. There's still some time for players to now, figure out where they're going to end up. So now let's talk about lineup. So this is kind of my impression based on who's with the team right now. Obviously, I think I think the biggest question mark, I don't know if he's necessarily starter or not, but this is kind of how I see the roster and the starting lineup and where people's roles kind of fall in. How does this look?
Yeah, I think Triplet is more of a big than a wing, but at the same time, I don't think it matters because if Max Triplet's getting big minutes, then BYU's in trouble, right? So,
okay.
Besides that, yeah, I think you're good. And then sorry.
Oh no, sorry. I was just wondering. This was a hard one because I don't know. I mean, it depends on how he wants to play him because some of these guys could be bigs or kind of like Boscovich, at times he took center minutes, but also played a lot of kind of power forward, give him size. And so I think there's a lot of flexibility there. With
I think Boscovich is your most versatile. I mean, he could line up with the bigs, but he played almost a small forward role at times in there. He wasn't necessarily he'd play the stretch forward role, obviously, but with his shooting range, he really gives you a dynamic lineup.
And that's a guy too, I think, is really going to benefit with another offseason kind of in the Kevin Young coaching lab, because he was kind of a later addition to the program, and he had his flashes this past season, but like there's a lot of weird. It kind of reminded me of Noah Waterman's first year, where like when he was at his best, like you were really excited by what you saw, but there wasn't a lot of consistency and maybe the decision making wasn't very sound. And so I think with another year off-season prep and coaching, this will be his last year of eligibility just because of his age. So he technically starts as a junior this past year. Yeah. So he only has one more year. And obviously, I mean, he's been on NBA radars before. Like obviously the talent's there. And I really think that could be an X factor type guy. Maybe he ends up starting later in the season. I don't think he'll start right away. But yeah, that's a guy I have my eye on. And then Baker as well. I mean, I've been a big Dawson Baker believer from the beginning, and his injuries have kind of been weird. And I think the fact that BYU got anything out of him this past year is really great just because they weren't expecting it. And so it was kind of icing on the cake. And I think him, another similar situation, another year in the lab, maybe a more defined role, kind of take that Trevin Nell role as like the corner guy, but add a little more offensively, maybe be a bit more of a playmaker at that position too, I think is big. And so even if Dawson Baker ended up being their starting two, like that's probably the worst case scenario, because they hopefully they get another transfer guard or they figure out something to line up. But even if that's the worst case scenario when Baker starts at the two, that's still a really good starting lineup. Because you have AJ, number one pick, Richie, possible NBA guy, Rob Wright, elite college point guard, Kaba, great center, and then Dawson Baker, who's like a fifth-year senior shot maker, just does all the right things if he can kind of keep the ball security better. But yeah, those are my two that I'm kind of looking at as kind of X factor guys in that rotation, Baker and Boscovich. And I mean, I'm trying to kind of zag a little bit because I know everyone's going to be talking about AJ and Kaba and Richie and those guys. Sorry, go ahead.
Jackson, how do you see that playing out? Because there's only so many shots in a game, right? BYU plays fast paced, a lot of offense, and you're going to feature AJ. Like he's the guy, right? He's coming here to be the guy. We're building the team around him. And it worked out great with Cooper Flagg this year. Duke had a ton of talented freshmen. They shared the ball. But is there enough, if you've got Rob Wright, Richie Saunders, AJ, they're going to take the majority, I assume, of that's a three-headed monster in there, which is going to be so much fun to watch. But I think you saw some guys leave, Cannon Catchings, who really just, in the end, didn't meld with the offense and is looking for greener pastures. Dallin Hall wanted more minutes. He wanted the ball more. How do you bring guys in with this starting lineup and say, yeah, come be a part of the team, a 3-and-D guy, stand in the corner and catch it from AJ when he drives and they collapse 5 guys on him?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's such a valid concern. Like I really think a three-headed monster of AJ, Rob Wright, and Richie Saunders might be the best in the sport next year, just because of how versatile all three of those players are. And I loved Yegor. I think Rob Wright's an upgrade just because that's a guy who can take over a game at the point guard position and drop 20 and a half, right? We never really saw that from Yegor, kind of the aggressiveness. But I really think like Kevin Young really excelled with that big rotation last year because everybody had such a defined role. Like when Trey Stewart took the floor, you knew exactly what he was going to do. When Foose and Dallin came on together, I loved watching them pick and roll and kind of the pairing there. And so I think Kevin Young, especially considering his NBA background and like Boscovich being a prime example of the versatility, like you could play him, like you probably can't play him as a 2, but you could play him at the 3, kind of doing similar things. He could be your stretch forward and shot maker, but then also as a small ball 5, like it's kind of this positionless basketball. And AJ, another guy, you could run the offense through AJ. You could post up AJ down low. You can score from wherever. I mean, Kevin Young is so creative about, I'm a big Mark Pope guy. Like I'm not trying to slander Pope, but it felt like his rotations and some of his lineups that he was trotting out there were kind of planned ahead of time. And it was more schedule versus feel in terms of some of the guys he was putting on the floor. Whereas Kevin Young is like, every 30 seconds he's rotating. I mean, ball goes out of bounds, boom, someone's it. Like just he was. It's like watching a baseball manager managing his bullpen. Like, okay, we got a lefty up, we got to put a lefty on the mound, right? Like he's just so good at those in-game kind of rotation decision making, and I think that can be a feather in his cap when he goes to these kids. Like, hey, I know I can't offer you the minutes or the touches that you want per se, but like, look at what we did last year. Just trust I know what I can do. And we have AJ, we have Rob Wright. Like, this is a Final Four team, and you could play a really key piece on a Final Four team. And I think it's harder to make that pitch a year ago when he doesn't really have anything under his belt. But at this point, because he's already done it, I think guys can look and be like, okay, I can humble myself a little bit. I don't know if you guys saw from Robbie McCombs like an hour ago, but Dominic McKenzie from or is it McKenzie? Let me see. From he used to be at Loyola Marymount. He was at UCLA last year. Dominic Harris, sorry. Dominic McKenzie's the football player.
Yeah, you're about to scare me. Like, are we losing another receiver?
No, not yet. But Dom Harris, he was at LMU. He was a really solid player there. Went to UCLA. He picked UCLA over BYU. He feels like he made a mistake. He's coming to BYU. He really wants a spot, and he's willing to kind of take a back seat, be a bench guy at BYU. And that's a dude that was averaging double digits in scoring in the WCC. And that's kind of like another Dawson Baker type that could score from anywhere, is kind of a capable veteran that you have on your bench that you can unleash at any point. And so I think you're seeing, I mean, obviously there's going to be guys that want the ball, and you're going to have your Cannon Catchings and your Dallin Halls that leave for greener pastures. But like, I think guys really believe in Kevin Young. And I think what you see in this staff that he's put together is what you're getting. Like, there's no, they're real guys. Like, I've spent some time with them. They're really good guys. They don't beat around the bush. They've created an environment that people want to come play at because they know what they're getting. And I think the draw of playing with AJ and being on what could be an iconic team 10, 20 years from now. I mean, like you look at like social media posts, and it's like trying to think of like crazy Final Four runs in the past, like a George Mason or a VCU from our neck of the woods, right? And then a BYU 20 years from now, like, remember when BYU went to the Final Four and AJ DeBanza and all these role play, like, that's such an awesome legacy to live. And so I really think that and then also like while you're at BYU, you get better, and you see that from Mag, where he became more of an offensive threat that he never was at Rutgers. And I'm going on for a while, but my point is, I really think the deep rotation does work for Kevin Young's favor, because he has that background where you can make it work, and you can give guys the touches they want, and everybody can eat, and everybody has a role. And I think the defined role nature of this lineup and these rotations is really appealing. So I think it'll work out, but I really hope I'm right. And I really hope AJ is – I've seen AJ play in high school, and he's not as ball dominant as you might think. Like, he moves away from the ball a lot. He sets screens. He's a really good defender. I think he's all about winning, and he wants to get better. And I think he's realized if you just ISO him every time, like, he's not going to get better. He's not going to be ready for the NBA. And so I really think he's going to be less ball dominant than maybe we would have imagined before. And that's going to open up a lot of things for other people. So very roundabout way of saying I'm not worried. I can't say about BYU's receiver room, but it's a basketball school now.
We'll get to that in a second. So I do think that there is a gravity, that people want to play with AJ, but I think for as many people that are turned on by that, it looks like it may be turning some people off, and maybe it is because of those roles. But the way you talk about roles and making sure everyone eats, like, you remind me of your uncle, again, Coach Payne. When I played for him back in church ball, man, he started me. I grew pretty late, and so I was still figuring a lot of things out, but he started me to give us size. But we had another guy that came off as a real, like, Manu Ginobili type role, right? To give us that spark off the bench. So often he would come in for me early and be that early substitute and give us that spark. And it was like, he never like complained, like he understood his role and like why he wasn't starting, even though he was like way better than me. And it worked out, and our team was pretty good. But that's just my way of saying, like, yeah, you've seen Coach Young, like it's no, like you always hear him say, it's not hypothetical. Right. I was in the NBA. Well, now it's not hypothetical in college. Like, we've seen him coach a year, and we've seen him with a big lineup, and maybe not everybody got like the most minutes, but everybody, as you said, had their role and had a way to contribute. They weren't just like out there taking up space. Like they were contributing in a meaningful way. And so I think there will be guys, and maybe it's guys that are coming saying, hey, maybe it's a top player from a mid-major coming up willing to take that role on the bench or who, I don't know. But what worries me just a little bit, and it's probably overreaction, is that a lot of guys that I've seen associated with BYU that have been considering BYU, it seems like this last week, several of them have flipped and gone the other way. Maybe they had it down to BYU, Florida State or whatever, for example, and they chose the other school. And so whereas like last year, it felt like if BYU zeroed in on someone, and it wasn't true, there were people that didn't come to BYU, but it felt like they were just like getting win after win after win. And we haven't really seen that this season, outside of, Rob Wright, really, which is a very big get. If
I can calm your fear just for a slight bit of calmness here. I forget, what was the guy's name who went to Florida State from UMass Lowell? Harris? Or I'm already blanking on his name. I'm sorry, but I do know that BYU did pull his offer at the last second. So he had no choice but to commit to Florida State. So I think in that specific case, that wasn't BYU getting beat out. That was BYU removing itself from
and I do think Young has said he's going to be more selective. He's going to be very selective. They're looking at international prospects. They're playing the long game. They're taking their time. Wright was this huge splash who comes in, and he's the example of a huge star coming because of DeBonsa. And what?
And tampering, but no, I'm sorry. Keep
going. Yes, of course,
That's Baylor. Okay,
that's the new BYU way. But I think we're going to see, when we were hitting all those major recruits last year. I mean, we just hit the 1 year mark of Kevin Young's coaching career, and so all of these big wins came in, late April, May into June. I think is when Boscovich joined. So I think he's playing the long game. He's going to be very selective, which is the right way to approach it when you have such a strong core. And given how he approached last year with these definitive roles, I think that's what he's going for. But I do wonder when DeBonsa signs and you're thinking, oh my goodness, everybody's going to want to play with him. And it's true, you get somebody the caliber of Wright because DeBonsa's here. But I do think you miss out on some others who are saying, spotlight's too bright. I want to shine my own light. I want the ball more than that. I don't want to be the role player, and so it kind of caps you on what you can bring in.
And I think too, like obviously last year Kevin Young was trying to figure out the college scene and how to recruit and those kind of things. I think the Cannon Catchings experience is a net positive for BYU. One, because he won you that Baylor game. That wasn't going to happen without Cannon Catchings.
And Arizona.
But I think the experience of getting a guy who was so highly touted and was a first-round projected guy, getting him to BYU and it not working out, and learning from that experience and knowing, okay, maybe fit over talent is the best way to go. I think there's some off the court stuff that it can be seen differently now. I'm not trying to like throw Cannon under the bridge. I just think that experience of missing out on a guy like that and maybe swinging and missing there helps the evaluation process going forward, where you think, okay, we have our specific style and brand of basketball that we play. Clearly Cannon Catchings wasn't the fit that we wanted. How many other Cannon Catchings are we looking at right now that we probably need to cut loose right now? So that's my kind of half glass full looking way of looking at it. And I think I love to just, whenever I talk about BYU, especially on the football side, just because this is how BYU always operates, whether it's Lavelle or Bronco or Kalani, it's the scene from Miracle, the hockey movie, where it's like, we're not looking for the best players, we're looking for the right ones. And that's kind of the BYU way, right? You want role players that buy into the vision and realize that the sum is always greater than the parts. And obviously BYU's parts next year are going to be awesome, whether it's AJ, Richie, Rob Wright, Kaba, I think he's going to have a big year. But the sum of everything, of everybody's contributions and the defined role that they play is so much better than the individual star power. And so I really think, like we've kind of been saying over and over again, I think Kevin Young has that figured out, and the definitive nature of his lineups and rotations is such a boost to what he's trying to do. And kind of looking at this graphic right now, I keep thinking, like, you have the first three guys, Richie and AJ and Wright, are going to be so ball dominant score types. I think that fourth guy, I really hope, is another mag type player that's just 3-and-D, come in, kind of be your Darrell Revis, just keep the best, put the best offensive player on the other team on an island, give you a timely three, play good defense, open up things for other people. I don't know who that's going to be. I mean, obviously they're so tapped into they're like the missionary department. They're so tapped in overseas. It's crazy. They could be pulling dudes from July and August that aren't on anyone's radar. So maybe they find their stretch forward that can be that defensive stopper. Maybe it's Diamande. Maybe it's, I don't know. I mean, there's so many options. And I really think that's the key to success this year, is having another mag type player, so that when you bring in a Baker or possibly a Dom Harris off the bench, or one of these kind of flamethrower spark plug shooter types, or a Boskovic, that it really just helps out with the lineups, and it gives Richie and AJ and Rob Wright time to shine. But I mean, like we've been saying over and over again, I think the defined roles and just the way that everyone complements each other in this rotation is such a boost for BYU. And I really hope and really think that's the brand of basketball and the brand of the program that Kevin Young wants to have at BYU.
Yeah, you actually answered what my next question was, which and actually before I do that, I do want to point out, because I forgot to say earlier, I put these three positions in the middle wing, because he says he wants to play positionless basketball. Yep. I mean, I still kind of have it as shooting guard, small forward, power forward. I think that's still kind of how we think of it, but to be, that's kind of his model. You got someone at point, and then you got your wings who can shoot and other things, and then your rim runner. So obviously there's some glaring holes here. You mentioned really kind of a defensive stopper, and maybe it does become Diamande. Obviously we need a backup point guard. You see big openness right there underneath Rob Wright. Do you know, and you kind of just answered this, but are there any other guys who are attached to the program that we're feeling good about? And also, what are the odds that Darian Williams comes to BYU?
Well, we talked about Dom Harris earlier. He took an unofficial visit to BYU today on his own terms. That's a guy that'd be a really solid bench piece, really solid guard. There's a point guard from Utah State by way of Southern Utah who's in the portal right now. I've heard some rumblings there too. I think the biggest need right now is another guard. We know that guard play wins in March. I mean, how many Purdue games have you seen where they melt down because they have all the height and bigs in the world, but they can't dribble basketball in the backcourt, right? So I really think another guard is a big deal. And personally, I'd like another big too, just because maybe that'll sort itself out, because they put Boskovic as like a small ball five. And I really think Staten is more of a project. I don't know if he's a year one contributor off the bat, which is fine. I mean, I think that's the expectation on both ends, hopefully. But yeah, if they can get another stopper defensively too, that's a big deal. But I really think guard is that big one. And the backup point guard from Utah State I talked about, Dom Harris, those are two guys. And then Darian Williams, man, I mean, that feels like the weirdest saga ever, just how it's unfolded. But BYU, they have the money. I think they should be considered a player for him. And I still think it's too early to tell. We don't really know what's going to happen there. But, I mean, let's not be surprised if BYU comes in and makes that happen. But at the same time, it's becomes the question, is BYU chasing talent, or are they chasing fit? Because how does he fit in alongside a Richie, alongside an AJ, alongside a Wright? Maybe you ask Richie to take a step back, which I don't know if you really want to do that. I don't know if you want to piss off the face of your program at this point, because I know AJ is like the star, but let's be real. Richie's like the heart and soul of this program. He's the 4-year guy. I mean, he's the tater tot king. He was the best player on last year's team. That's not a guy that and also kind of like flipping things around from like a church and institution perspective, like the number of return to missionary players at BYU is only going to go down as this kind of Kevin Young era comes in. And I'm not saying that like that's the right or wrong way of doing things, but like I think BYU is always going to want to have like some LDS local return missionary aspect of their program. And so if you bring in a guy like Darian Williams, and that might chase Richie away, that might upset Richie, like that's one of your like key, like kind of standard BYU guys. I don't know if you want to take that risk, right? I mean, does Darian Williams make them all that better in terms of how loaded they are right now in terms of ball dominant guys? I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting. Like, I'm not going to lose sleep if they don't get Darian Williams. I think they're probably still trying to make it happen, but at the same time, I think fit is everything at this point. And if they bring in Darian Williams, someone's going to be unhappy. It's not going to be AJ because you're paying him all that money to be there. It's not going to be Rob Wright because he plays a different role. Like, I really think that could hurt Richie. And I mean, as day one Richie Saunders mega fan, I don't want to see that happen, but who knows, man? I mean, Kevin Young knows more than me. I'm not trying to say I'm smarter than him or anything, but it would be a little confusing if they brought in Williams from my perspective.
Yeah. Speaking of which, because you talked about always wanting players and the certain identity, obviously there was some controversy going around about saying we're not going to be the highest bidder. You know, we want to be involved, but we don't want to be the highest bidder. Is that just saying, like, I don't understand the issue with that. Like, is that just saying we don't want the perception of we're just buying players? Is that really what that concern is? Because to me, it's like, I mean, AJ, I think the offers from what I hear were all pretty similar, but had we overpaid, you know, to beat out everybody else like AJ, I would have said, well, that's worth it.
Yeah. I do know that AJ had bigger offers than BYU. What was nice with BYU is he could start making NIL earlier, because if you go to high school in the same state where you're playing college, you can start making NIL earlier. Just there's some rule there. So that plays into it too. But I think the highest bidder comment, it was maybe a weird way of saying BYU isn't doing this NIL thing to get in bidding wars. They don't see it as they're going against other teams. They see it as like BYU is going to be the highest bidder for some people, right? Like a Dawson Baker 2 years ago when Pope brought him in. I'm sure BYU probably offered more money than another school, given that where he was coming from. And BYU probably offered the most for Rob Wright, right? Like that's just kind of what it seems like. But at the same time, I don't think BYU is going like, okay, what is Duke offering you, and we'll give you more. Or I don't think they're playing that game. They're not the highest bidder in terms of, it's not a bidding war. It's not a competition. They're trying to assess what is worth giving a player and then give them that. You know, I don't think it's them against another school. I don't think it's them trying to drive up prices and outbid other people. I think it's more of, hey, like, come, like, what's your number? We'll try to get you that and come and play for us and be part of this. That's kind of my roundabout way of thinking. I mean, because BYU is going to be the highest bidder at some point, right? Like, that's natural, and I don't think that's something to shy away from. Like, it's okay to have money, right? Like, greed is good sometimes, but I think the way that Elder Gilbert might have said that maybe wasn't the greatest choice of words, but kind of doing some thinking and pondering on the words of a general authority, right? That's kind of the take that I had. Was it's less about, it's not a bidding war. Like, they're not outbidding people. They're not trying to get in the thick of it with other schools. It's more of, they're going to give what they think is worthy giving somebody. And maybe it's the most expensive, maybe it's not, but that's just what they're going to do.
Well, and I think that's really evident in what's going on with the football team right now. Those two starter transfers really seem driven by NIL. There could be a component of playing time. I mean, there's a lot there, but it really comes down to NIL, at least what makes the most sense, of saying, hey, I think I'm worth this much, and BYU's got to make a decision on the value of that player and the impact on NIL on everyone else, and what they're willing to do with their program. And so I do think there's a limit in the perception from the national media, because you got DeBonta, because you got Wright, is that BYU is just flush with cash and throwing it around everywhere, and, you know, blowing everybody out, paying 3 times the amount of NIL offers anywhere else. And that's clearly not the case. I mean, the students themselves who are coming here will say that we either we weren't the highest bidder or we were the same, right? We bid the same as everyone else, and they made a call based on where they wanted to be and who they wanted to be coached by. But it is, everybody's trying to figure out this new frontier. I mean, it is so Wild West with NIL that you do end up the highest bidder sometimes, but the intent is we're paying market value. We're going to assess market value, and we're going to pay market value. And if that means that Keelan Marion's going to walk away, then apparently BYU is going to say we're going to lose a great wide receiver.
Yeah, and that's probably one of my least favorite parts of the NIL era of college athletics, is the fact that when somebody said, like, culture becomes what people think is a cop-out. Like, a guy like AJ wants to pick BYU because he likes the NBA-centric coaching staff and he thinks Kevin Young could get him prepared for the next level, all those things. And people are like, oh, no, BYU offered the most money. Or, you know, a Keanu Tanavasa wants to go to BYU and play for Kalani and be part of this culture, and people think it's all about money. Like, I'm sure money factors into it, but like BYU's built a culture in both programs that people want to be part of. Like, it's different than what's happening in the rest of college sports. Like, I think people have called Kalani Sitake the Ted Lasso of college football, right? Like, that's different. It's kind of a change of pace than what's happening at a Nick Saban type school or a rip your head off type coach, right? And so I really think that in the past, like, great recruiters, great coaches are kind of going to fall by the wayside because they're going to get priced out of these. They're going to get priced out of these athletes because they can't match what people are asking for. But at the same time, like, people's reasons for going to these schools are going to be kind of taken with a grain of salt because people are just going to cry money and cry poverty and those things. And it's unfair because like BYU's built a really awesome culture in both basketball and football. And, you know, it's not all about money. Like, BYU's made that clear. Like, they're going to try to do what they can to not fall behind financially. And sometimes they have an edge, sometimes they don't. But like, the culture matters too. And I think people need to keep that in mind. Like, sometimes people want something different. Sometimes people want to be part of something that they see. You mentioned Rob Wright talking about the Marriott Center environment when he was there, and Conor McGregor's there, and those kind of things. Like, obviously money talks, but like when you have those experiences with programs and you see that and you kind of, it draws you to it, like that matters too. And it just really bums me out that that's kind of out of the equation, that people don't really like pay as much attention to that anymore. That's kind of a weird side tangent, but like, that's what BYU is about, right? It's about having something different and being better because of it. It
is. And you can't tell me that North Carolina and Alabama couldn't pull together $5 million or $7 million, whatever that number was for Devon. I mean, come on. 100%. Come on. You can't tell me that no one is matching a $3.5 million offer for Wright. Really? The Blue Bloods, they can't offer that? I mean, come on. And so, yes, we're talking about big money, and it's odd for BYU to be in this circumstance because we haven't historically been there. But now that we can, we are, and we have the NIL funds to do it. But don't tell me we're beating the crud out of Blue Bloods and they can't go and you know, double the offer if they wanted to for a generational player. It's not about that at the end of the day, because the Blue Bloods have endless resources to beat us out of NIL if that's what it really came down to.
I will say, I think on a national level, BYU is getting that kind of recognition. It sounds like it's more, you know, sour grapes from Utah fans or maybe Baylor fans now or whoever. But I think people who aren't in the aren't as biased and aren't in the thick of it as much see that BYU is building something. And I think there's I think Kevin Young gets a lot of credit nationally. So but yeah, it does, you know, I get your point and I agree completely, Jackson, on that. But just to go back to the football thing real quick, switch gears off of basketball. Adam mentioned, you know, the Marion and the Taggart things. Are those kind of unique situations? Because when I first heard that, I was like, what is going on in Provo? But since then, I've seen some other things that have kind of helped calm my fears and anxiety about that whole situation. What's your read on it?
Yeah, so I'll start with Taggart just because that's kind of the easiest one to explain. Taggart wanted more money than certain starters, and BYU kind of balked at that. BYU didn't really – I mean, Taggart was good last year, but I think the linebacker room is so deep right now. If Asera can stay on the field, they view Asera as an upgrade over Taggart. Obviously, Kelly and Glasgow are potential NFL guys. Taggart's kind of the odd man out. He's undersized. He did a lot of good things, but you know, there's some young guys. There's Tyler Payne. There's a couple other linebackers that they really like that are coming through the program. And so I think Taggart's
no relation, Tyler Payne.
No relation, no. Okay. I mean, look, Payne's do it best, right? Like, I'm gonna root for my guy, but unfortunately, I can't claim him. But so they have young linebackers they like. They play a lot of two linebacker. They do a lot of 4-2-5 stuff. And Taggart would kind of be the odd man out there. I think they like. I mean, Kelly clearly is better than Taggart. Glasgow is clearly better than both of them, I think. And so Taggart, that playing time and NIL, and sometimes you have that. Sometimes it's good that, you know, you bring in a 4-star linebacker and he beats out your current guy. Like, those are the kind of things you want at BYU. And sometimes a player is going to overvalue themselves, and you're not going to see eye to eye on what they're worth. And I liked Harrison Taggart, and I would have been happy if he was at BYU this coming year. But, you know, when you have guys that are coming in that you like more and you're kind of stuck in the middle, like, it's probably best for all parties to go a different direction and give the player a chance to earn it somewhere else and see what you have in the guys that you bring in. So The Taggart thing, I'm much less worried about because I think they are strong at linebacker. You know, I was thinking like when this past year and this coming year, I was thinking like when was the last time BYU had this good a group of linebackers in Glasgow, Kelly, and Taggart? And even with Taggart leaving, I still feel like Taggart or Glasgow and Kelly are as good a tandem as we've had since like Fred Warner and Sion Takitaki and like you know that kind of era. And then you bring in a Sarah, and Kalani's really high on a Sarah, and so I think that linebacker is a position that there shouldn't be worries there. I still think BYU needs another corner, and then the D line is going to be a lot different this year, and hopefully Tanavasa can carry a lot of weight because some of those edge players aren't as tested. But Marion is the one that I'm a little more concerned about because, one, I was at a lot of the spring ball practices, and he was really, really good because obviously Chase Roberts has tore his labrum, and so Marion's getting a lot more reps, but they were doing a lot of creative things with him. He was getting involved a lot of ways. Like, I feel like the last 2 years, he's been really raw, and I feel like you're seeing kind of a more finished product, Keelan Marion. And then obviously in the return game, he's so valuable too. And so I think with Marion, you know, other schools, SEC schools are coming calling, and they are offering him absurd amount of money just to focus on kick returning, and that's more than BYU can offer. And so I think that's more of just all right, well, we got let's try to figure out something else. Like, and I don't really think I have nothing to confirm this. This is kind of from like rumblings I've heard and kind of my own perception, but like I think once you enter the portal at BYU from a football perspective, the door's kind of closed on coming back. I think the Cody Epps return and the production that came from there, lack thereof, kind of soured a lot of people on going to bat for these guys once they leave. So I think it's going to be very, very rare for a guy to enter the portal and then come back to BYU. But that receiver room, man, it kind of worries me because you got Chase Roberts, love him. He used to be my ward in Provo. Good dude, great player. But coming off a torn labrum, don't know how much you can rely on him there. JoJo Phillips is solid, but like, is he a number one guy? Parker Kingston, is he more than a gadget receiver? Can you count on Cody Hagan to stay healthy? Is Tay Nakua a college body yet? Is LaMason Waller ready for college action? You know, you got these receivers, and there's too many question marks in that room. And so having Marion there would have made me feel a lot better, especially considering you don't really have a backup tight end aside from Carson Ryan, who's I think is going to have a solid year. But like aside from Ryan, like what else do you have at the tight end room? And Jake Retzloff is still Jake Retzloff. He's the biggest question mark of all, right? And so the Marion thing is more of a red flag for me. I don't think it says anything about the state of the BYU program. I just think, you know, BYU let one got away because the price got too high and he made a decision. But I think it's more of a red flag, like, like the receiver room is not in shambles, but a few wrong turns this year, and you could be looking at a serious issue. And so I really hope that they get a receiver in the portal or figure out something there and maybe run the ball a bit more this year because they have some talented running backs, and maybe try to grind more clock and play a different style of offense. But I just don't see Aaron Roderick wanting to yield the passing game at all to the run game. So I don't know. It's the Marion thing. I don't want to say it's kept me up at night, but like I've spent a lot of time just kind of like questioning, like, where does BYU go from here at the receiver room?
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Trevor.
No, go for it.
No, I was going to say as the offseason progresses, I get a little bit more worried about certain areas where you feel like, all right, this team, the core came together. We're going to upgrade. You know, we went 11-2. We could do even better this season. And now, as time goes on, I agree that, I mean, you make some great points about the wide receiver room. I was stoked about the wide receivers. But now you have to see JoJo Phillips make that jump. He has to. Everybody thought, oh, he's probably there. I think his ceiling's higher than Marion. I think Marion was way more polished and ready to step into that number 2 role than JoJo Phillips. But maybe he is. Maybe this is his year where he steps up. But outside of Phillips and Roberts, if you get an injury to one of those two, it's really unproven, right? Kingston's a great number 3. I do think he can be more than a gadget receiver. I don't think he can be a number 1. I don't know that he can be a number 2. And so I think if you're going to really make that jump in the passing game, you got to have more than that. I'm not too concerned about tight end. It's been 5 years since we've even used a tight end. So, I mean, we say it every year. Every year I buy in and like, oh man, this is the year we're going to use a tight end again. This is going to be awesome. And like 3 games in, like, do we have a tight end or is it just like an extra lineman we throw on the field? So if Carson Ryan gets injured, it is a problem because there's no one behind him, but I don't know that we're ever going to throw to him. but you got to have, we've had really good receivers for a long time. And right now we have really good, young, unproven receivers.
Yeah.
And you don't want to just cross your fingers in that area when you're going up against Big 12 defenses.
I was going to say too, like in 2022, when Romney and Nakua were out for a while, Jaron Hall really kind of saved that offense for a stretch because he started, I mean, Keanu Hill and Cody Epps and Chase Roberts and Braden Cosper were all very unproven guys in that receiver room. And Hall made it work, and he kind of turned them into weapons and kept them afloat until, Romney came back for like a day and then got hurt again. And then Puka came back, and obviously we know the rest. But the issue there is Jaron Hall is an NFL quarterback, and Jake Retzlaff, we still don't know. He's like the Mario Kart, like, question box. Like, you never really know what you're going to get with Jake Retzlaff. And I really want to believe that he's gotten better in the offseason, but at the same time, like, that quarterback room is so thin. Was there anybody really there to push him? Like, what kind of Jake Retzlaff are we going to get this year? And so, I want to feel good about having unproven receivers and having guys like Waller and Hagan and JoJo Phillips who have high ceilings, but the fact of who's throwing them the ball, and I'm not a Retzlaff hater by any means. Like, when everyone was barking to put in Bohannon last year, I was trying to stay the course. But at the same time, like, I don't know if I trust Retzlaff to turn those guys into something that they're not currently at this point, And so the Marion thing just really bums me out because I thought he was going to just be a monster this year. You saw flashes of it. That he made a catch against Arkansas. Keaton Slovis threw him like a perfect dime. And I was like, okay, BYU has this guys for the next 2 years. Like, this could be their number one with Roberts. Like, those two are going to be ballers together. And just the fact that we're not going to really get the culmination of that's kind of a bummer for BYU. But I don't know. I really hope BYU can find some in the portal because receiver is that's probably their biggest need right now, receiver and corner.
Yeah. So you simultaneously made me feel better and worse after talking to you.
That's what facts do,
I mean, you laid out, obviously the receiver situation, why I feel worse, but I do feel better in the sense that this shows that it's not necessarily something systemic at BYU. This is a nature of college football in today's world. When you have success, there are going to be guys that other programs target. And I thought that being in a Power Four conference, being a team that had a lot of success last year, has a great culture, and has enough juice and bringing back enough guys to show that, hey, we're in position to compete next year and really make some noise again, was going to be enough to keep most of that core together. I felt like they were bought in. Sounds like there's a couple guys who weren't, but those are for individual reasons, and that's not necessarily something systemic throughout the program. That's just college football today, and that makes me feel better. Not that I really thought that there was something wrong, but when both those names popped up, it did kind of make me.
I felt that way for a bit.
Yeah, and I was actually at my kids' play, and you broke the news to me. You started texting me about it, and I had no idea. And actually play with your cousins there. So this last weekend, Jackson. But so anyway, yeah, it does make me feel a little bit better though. So I guess I could sleep a little better tonight.
And hey, Utah's best receivers in the portal. I mean, maybe BYU can throw some gas on there, bring him to Provo. That'd be pretty unreal.
Tamper some more. Great.
Yeah.
Since any time we grab from the portal, that's the cause.
Tradition, spirit, tampering.
Change the motto. Well, Jackson, I appreciate it. We are already over an hour. Don't want to take any more of your time. I appreciate you coming on and sharing some insights. Why don't you plug your stuff? You do a lot of great work. Let everyone know where they can find your content.
Appreciate that. I write for the Deseret News. I'm part of the BYU coverage team there. I think everybody who listens to this pod is probably familiar with the Deseret News. So just go there. You'll probably see my name a few times, and you can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days at Jackson5Payne. Posting a lot about BYU and a lot about all sorts of DC sports and just whatever else interests me. So yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Well, I'm stoked either way. Like, what a time to be a BYU fan and have all this stuff going on, both basketball and football. And so I really appreciate you coming in, sharing your insights. And obviously you're much closer to it than we are. So appreciate that, and best of luck as you get into this next season and cover the team. So we look forward to hearing more from you.
Thanks, fellas. Yeah, anytime. Happy to hop on and hang out with some fellow Virginians.
All right. Appreciate it. All right. Well, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, all that stuff. Go follow Jackson as well. And as always, go Cougs.
Go Cougs.